Hey folks, at this point in the term, you probably have tons and tons of scraps left over, at least several pounds. I don't like to do this until I have at least, half of a 5-gallon bucket or so. It's one thing that's really important to remember is that you need to make sure your clay is completely bone dry. So if you put it to your cheek, it feels pretty warm. It's going to be room temperature and it's going to just melt right down, and we can turn this into new clay without a ton of effort. I do also like to make sure that I have lots of little pieces instead of big chunks. So sometimes I'll go in with a brick, and just kind of smash up some of these pieces that I think are a little bit big. But I got this bucket totally, 3/4 full. What I'm going to be doing is taking some water and filling this up to about 1 or 2 inches above the clay line. And then we're going to let it sit. I usually let it sit for at least a day. So I'm going to pour this in. Let it sit like this. And you should be able to see lots and lots of little bubbles. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that. The porosity of the clay is wide open at this point, and the water's rushing in there, and it's literally just going to melt into a perfect little slurry. I'm going to mix it up with a drill and then set it out on my table and let it air dry to the consistency that I want. So we'll let this sit and get after it tomorrow. This clay has been sitting for about 2 hours. I want to occasionally give it a stir. You can already see that the clay is turning into a slip. Just want to basically kind of feel it every once in a while for the next day or so until I feel no hard chunks whatsoever, and then I'm going to mix it up, pour it out, and re-wedge it. Well, my big mound is getting pretty dry. Dry on the outside, pretty wet on the inside. So I'm going to take this knife and cut it and rotate it. I'm basically going to put dry side to dry side and expose some of this. Try to rotate it around. Well, after a couple days of sitting outside, started as a wet slip. You can see here I have a nice solid ball of clay. I've cut it a couple times, split it. What I'm going to do now is cut this into thirds. This is probably about 40 pounds of clay. And I'm just going to turn it over. I can feel when I cut it through the wire, there's some lumps. I want this material to be as consistent as I can. Turn this over, just kind of mix it a little bit. When it's larger chunks like this, I do the spiral wedge. I do the ram's head. I already feel the clay is a little bit more consistent. It's actually at a perfect consistency that I like. Looks relatively plastic. You can see the ram. I'm going to cut this in half and look at the consistency. Looks like some good usable clay. I can run my finger across it. It feels consistent. This is ready to build with. Takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of time, but our clay is basically good forever. I'm going to go ahead and finish wedging this up. We'll start building our next project.